And welcome back to another episode of the Don't Argue with the Facts podcast. I'm your host, Noah Love, and today it's going to be a different episode of the Don't Argue with the Facts podcast because in this episode, we will be talking about the BCS era, the BCS era of college football, the best era in the history of college football. Sorry, college football playoff era, but it's just facts. We will be talking about that, going through the history of that. I really have wanted to make a BCS video for a while. I just haven't really gotten around to it. But today is the day we are going to be talking about the BCS era. So get your popcorn, your drinks ready. Let's get straight into it. The BCS era. It was created in 1998 by then SEC Commissioner Roy Kramer as a way to pair the two highest ranked teams in a national championship game at a traditional bowl site. The BCS and its precursors, the the Bowl Coalition and Bowl Alliance, were designed to create a number one versus number two bowl matchup every year that previously had only happened 8 times. Before the Bowl Coalition and the Bowl Alliance as well, just as a note, there wasn't a national championship game. If at the end of the season, if you were ranked number one, you were the champ. Or in some cases, it could be a tie. So if you're number one in the coaches and then another team is number one in the media, it's it co-champions. So, yeah, that's basically what that was. BCS was created in 1998 so we could actually get a number 1 and number 2 champion. I am going to show you guys, I'm going to go over every national championship game of the BCS era. I'm going to do that, and then I am going to explain to you guys some of the controversies of the BCS era. Let's do it. During the BCS era, 1998 to 2013, so 15 years was the BCS era. There were multiple 11 non-Power 5 conference teams that were undefeated at the time, but due to obviously it being only 2 teams and due to being the computer and everything, those teams would not get to go. Let me just give you the list to the teams. Tulane in 1998, Marshall in 1999, Utah in 2004 and 2008, Boise State in 2004, 2006, 2008, and 2009, Hawaii in 2007, and TCU in 2009 and 2010. Went without being given an opportunity to play in the national championship game. Due to Mid-American Conference Bowl tie-ins, the 1999 Marshall team was in danger of not going to any bowl game if it had lost a conference title game despite its number 11 ranking. Another problem was presented when more than one non-AQ conference team had an undefeated schedule in the same season. In 2008, Utah and Boise State both went undefeated. However, the BCS rules only provided for one automatic at-large BCS berth from the teams in the non-Power 5 conferences. Therefore, a 2-loss Ohio State team was chosen over Boise State for the Fiesta Bowl, and Boise State ended up outside of the BCS games. The problem arose again in 2009 with Boise State and TCU undefeated. The final BCS ranking saw TCU at number 4 and Boise State at number 6, which meant that only TCU was guaranteed a slot in the BCS bowls. However, the Broncos were not left out of the BCS Bowl party this time, as they were chosen to face TCU in the Fiesta Bowl. Nonetheless, both Boise State and TCU finished the regular season unbeaten. In the case of Boise State, for the second year in a row, the fourth year out of six, and in 2006 finished as the only undefeated team in the nation and never had a chance to play for the BCS national title, which obviously that stings. Boise State is probably to date the best, still the best non-Power Five team slash what's the word, team slash organization or team slash program, that's the word, and in the nation. It's a shame they never got to play for the national championship. 1999, there wasn't a lot of controversy. The two teams that played was number one Tennessee and number two Florida State, with number one Tennessee winning. Marshall was undefeated, but they weren't really considered. In 2000, number one Florida State and number two Virginia Tech played for the BCS National Championship. Florida State ended up winning, so they did not go back. They went back to back in terms of national title game appearances, but they ended up obviously winning one of two. This is where the controversy comes in 2001. Oklahoma and Florida State play for the national championship. Florida State went to the national title game after losing to the number 3 team in the country, Miami. Miami's only loss that year was on the road at Washington, but Florida State and Miami had one loss. But Miami beat Florida State, which means Miami should have won, right? No. The computers chose Florida State to go, and well, the game was, looking at the score, was terrible. It was 13-2. Miami ended up going to the Sugar Bowl and playing Florida, number 7 in the nation, and beating them 37-20. Miami was snubbed out of a national championship appearance. They weren't, however, the next year, because in 2002, they ended up playing the number 2 ranked Nebraska Cornhuskers and winning. Here's the controversy here. Nebraska should not have been in this game. They had just lost the week before, but still got voted to play in this game against Miami and got stomped. Who should have been the team to take their spot? I don't know. There were other teams like Washington, or not Washington. There were other teams like Oregon and Colorado that could have took Nebraska's spot. The whole thing was Nebraska should not have been there. You could have chose anybody else. 2003 was actually kind of it was kind of okay. It was kind of chill. Number 2 Ohio State beat number 1 Miami in 2 overtimes. The controversy in this game comes in where it's not about the 2 teams selected. It is about what happened in the game. Miami, it's 24-7, it's 24-17. It's a 4th and goal. It's Ohio State throws a fade route. The pass is incomplete. No, there was originally no flag. So Miami goes and they celebrate, thinking they just etched their names into the history books, going back to back. The ref, 5-10 seconds after the play, approximately, throws a flag, pass interference. If you're asking for my honest opinion, it was not pass interference. It was not pass interference. Miami was robbed. Ohio State ends up winning the game. So Miami was robbed. That's the whole. They were robbed of being back-to-back national champions. Really robbed of potentially doing a three-peat. So that's it. So that was the whole thing with 2003. 2004. The BCS National Championship game was number 2 LSU and number 1 Oklahoma. Here's the controversy. The team that was left out was number 3 USC. USC beat number 4 Michigan in the Rose Bowl. The Rose Bowl was a BCS tie-in between the Big Ten champ and the Pac-10 champ. So if they weren't playing in the national title, they would automatically play in the Rose Bowl. So that's how that was matched up. LSU at number 2, they beat number 1 Oklahoma. However, they are co-national champions this year because in the coaches poll, USC got 3 votes. They got 3 votes for the number 1 position. And so USC and LSU were both recognized as national champions. So there was co-national champions that year. That's crazy. 2005. The BCS National Championship. There was really not a lot of controversy here. USC and Oklahoma. USC won this game pretty handedly. They ended up having to vacate the championship a little bit later on because of things that happened with Reggie Bush and Pete Carroll. That's a whole separate potential video. But yes, USC, they won that fair and square, but they ended up having to vacate their national title later on. 2006, no controversy, one of the best games in the history of the Rose Bowl and of the national championship game just in general. Texas, led by Vince Young, took down number 1 USC 41-38 in a classic game. There was no real controversy there. 2007. Oh, brother. 2007 was the year of the upset. 2007 is nationally recognized by college football fans as the craziest year in not only the history of the BCS, but the history of just college football in general. Let's look at by the numbers. A ranked team lost to a lower ranked or unranked opponent 62 times during the regular season. Top 10 teams lost 29 times. The number 1 team lost 4 times. If you were at number 2, you were cursed because at the number 2 team lost 7 times, all in the final of the the number 2 team lost 7 times, all in the final 9 weeks of the season. So the 7 of the final 9 weeks, if you were at number 2, you were most likely going down. It got so crazy that number 2, at one point, the University of South Florida was the number 2 ranked team in the nation. The number 1 and 2 teams lost in the same week. Three three times, including weeks 13 and 14. Multiple top 10 teams lost in the same week in 9 of the 14 weeks of the regular season, including 5 top 10 losses. Oregon lost to an unranked opponent in each of the final 3 weeks while being ranked number 2, number 9, and number 17. Ranked teams from Florida were upset by an unranked team 4 times while those same schools upset a ranked opponent 3 times. Week 1, the number of upsets was only 2, but obviously 2007 Appalachian State defeats number 5 Michigan 34-32. That was the big one. Week 2 had 3 upsets, with the biggest one being South Carolina defeating number 11 Georgia. Week 3 had 4 upsets, which the biggest one being Kentucky defeating number 9 Louisville. Week 4 had 4 upsets, having Michigan, who had just lost to Appalachian State 3 weeks earlier, beating number 10 Penn State. Week 5 had 8 upsets, with the highest ranked team to lose being the number 3 Oklahoma Sooners. They lost to Colorado. Week 6 had 5 upsets, the biggest one being number 2 USC losing to Stanford. Week 7 had 6 upsets, with number 1 LSU going down to number 17 Kentucky. Week 8 had 6 upsets, where, yes, number 2 ranked South Florida, they lost to Rutgers. I can't explain it to you. Week 9 had 5 upsets, where number 23 UConn defeated number 10 South Florida. Week 10 had number 2 ranked Boston College. What? Yes, they were number 2 ranked at a point. They lost to Florida State, who was unranked. Week 11 had 5 upsets. Number 1 Ohio State ended up losing to unranked Illinois. Week 12 had 3 upsets. Number 2 Oregon ended up losing to Arizona. Week 13 had 5 upsets, where number 1 LSU, they were ranked number 1 again, lost to Arkansas. Week 14, 3 upsets. Number 1 Missouri going down to number 9 Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game. All of this chaos, all of it, led to the 2008 national championship game, where number 2 LSU beat number 1 Ohio State 38-24. Another SEC team wins after the previous year in 2007. Florida, who a lot of people thought shouldn't have been there, beat Ohio State. So the craziness of 2007 led to LSU, who lost twice as number 1, ended up winning the national championship. 2009 BCS national championship actually wasn't. It was actually kind of calm. It was actually kind of calm, outside of the fact that Boise went undefeated again, and they felt like they should have got a shot. Outside of that, number 2 Florida, they won their second in 3 years. They beat number 1 Oklahoma. This is where we get to the good part. 2010, the BCS national championship game. Number 1 Alabama beats number 2 Texas in the national title game. So this is Coach Saban's first championship, I believe. Number 3 TCU thought they should have earned a shot at the national championship game that year. 2011, number 1 Auburn defeats number 2 Oregon. That one, there wasn't a whole lot of controversy in terms of that game, and in terms of who was selected for that game. 2012, the BCS National Championship game was number 2 Alabama versus number 1 LSU. Here comes the robbery. LSU had just beat Alabama 3 weeks earlier. LSU went on the road and beat Alabama 9-6. LSU went to the SEC title game and won. They won. Alabama ends up getting voted in over Oklahoma State, who was the number 3 team, who had won their conference championship and only had one loss. Alabama edged Oklahoma State by 0.086, which is the closest margin in the history of the BCS in terms of choosing who goes to the national title for a number 2 team. This was so crazy that if number 1 LSU had, even if they had lost, if the game was not decisive, they would have still crowned LSU national champions. Now, obviously, Alabama shuts out LSU, so that did not happen. 2013 wasn't a lot of craziness. It was just that number 1 Notre Dame kind of frauded their way to the national championship game, not really beating a whole lot of good teams. Number 2 Alabama, it crushed them 42-14 in the championship game. That was the Manti Te'o team for Notre Dame. In the 2014 BCS National Championship win, there was no controversy. Number 1 Florida State won the ACC. Number 2 Auburn, they won the SEC. They had beat number 1 Alabama in the kick 6 game. Auburn wins the SEC championship game. They advance to play in the national championship game, and Florida State wins on a game-winning touchdown drive, 34-31, and that's it. The BCS is no longer its history, and now we go to the 4-team playoff. That the BCS is probably the best time in college football. It is probably the golden era of college football, if we are being honest. The presentation, the legendary players. I mean, you just got to think about some of these players. Johnny Manziel, Cam Newton, Reggie Bush, Darren McFadden, Adrian Peterson, Vince Young, just to name a few. Michael Vick, Ed Reed, Sean Taylor. You know, just a bunch of insanely great players. And then you look at the coaches. Coach Nick Saban, Steve Spurrier, Pete Carroll, Mike Leach, Urban Meyer. I don't think this level of greatness in terms of college football, the way the game is going now, will ever be duplicated. I don't think it will ever be duplicated again. Maybe if If they can give us a BCS presentation with the now 12-team playoff, that might be too much to ask for these days, but it is what it is. The BCS, I think the playoff is a good idea, but the BCS just, there was a certain level of excitement. There was a certain level of just, I hate using this word, aura about it that to me will probably never be duplicated. I listed some of the great players. That's not all of them. Some of the great coaches. That's not all of them. The bowl game still mattered. The New Year Six, the with the tie-ins and everything, that was great. If you grew up like I did in the BCS era, that was one of the best times to be a college football fan. Now we're probably going to 16 and we're going to have teams arguing, oh, I have 4 losses, I should be in. Where in the BCS era, you you had teams arguing, well, we went undefeated, why aren't we in? We have 1 loss, why aren't we in? Shame how far it's fallen, but that's it. I I really enjoyed making this and researching this. The BCS was really a great time. All right, this has been an episode of the Don't Argue with the Facts podcast. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and see ya.